The phrase cleanliness is next to godliness is not a direct quote from the Bible. It's believed to have been popularized by John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, in a sermon entitled On Dress, 1791. In it, he said, "Slovenliness is no part of religion. Cleanliness is indeed next to godliness." Can you hear him? I tried. So I can't imagine ever preaching a sermon called On Dress. And we could talk about religion because he's talking about the cultic practice, not spirituality. But I want to talk about something different today. I'm interested in how this text sets up several binaries. This binary of cleanliness and dirty, and the binary of light and dark. Clean is good when you're talking about preparing food or doing surgery or rolling or just having rolled around in the mud. But what about dirt or soil? Without dirt, no plants, no underground critters, no health, no planet. The dirt sequesters carbon, provides home for fungi, microbial bacteria, and single-celled beings, which we can't live without. Getting your hands in the soil or dirt is good for you. The critters under your fingernails contribute to your own health. Grounding occurs when you work in the garden, reorienting your body's electromagnetism. It's important to stay clean, but some in this country suggest that we bathe too much. Ask a homeless person about the value of a clean plate when the food on it is the only meal they will get that day. All of this to say that sometimes the biblical religious notions that we read of refer to binaries that don't contribute to good thinking. Let's look at the dark versus light imagery, the other binary in the text today, and why I chose the poem by Camilla Seth, by the way. We don't put a lamp under a cover so it can't be seen. That's true, unless you're a child reading in bed after lights out with a flashlight under the covers. Annie Dillard writes, "You do not have to sit outside in the dark. However, if you want to see the stars, you will find that darkness is necessary." Now let's talk about sleep. People who recently moved to either pole, the South Pole or the North Pole, often have very difficult times getting to sleep during those days when there's only a few hours of darkness or maybe barely darkness at all. Maybe one of you is that person who needs a pitch dark room to sleep well. Let's talk to our creation justice people about the value of dark skies for critters, about its importance for our health, about the energy impacts of too much light at night. I spent a week in June in Florida. I don't recommend it. Hotter than Hades. But they have we're on the coast, on the Gulf Coast. They have a law that's fined by $250 fine a night if you don't block the lights in your Gulf-facing dwelling. 9 p.m. at night, you have to block your windows that face the Gulf if you have lights on. because the turtles who come up on the beach and just lay their eggs get confused about how to get back to the water. They can see the moon shining on the water, and they know that's the way to go. The hatchlings as well. They know instinctively to go toward the light. So you can see it would be confusing if there are all kinds of lights on the shoreline. Wendell Berry writes, "To go in the dark with a light is to know the light. To know the dark, go dark. Go without sight and find that the dark too blooms and sings and is traveled by dark feet and dark wings." And Mary Oliver writes the poem on the cover of your program, "Someone I loved once gave me a box full of darkness. It took me years to understand that this was a gift too." We're programmed, and I think in church as well, because of the music like This Little Light of Mine, and I had a deja vu with the prelude, Peter, thank you. Could be triggering for some people, though. It was a throwback to the 70s youth group that I was in. And it only takes a spark to get a fire going, and you want to pass it on. And it's a lovely song. But I wonder if it suggests that to be real followers of Jesus means to have this bright, shiny light. And that's the way that we connect with people. But what if darkness, what if those other feelings besides the bright and shiny contribute to our authenticity? What if we're only whole if we acknowledge the light and the dark within? Do we all have light in us? Yes, if you mean that we all bear the image of God. And do we all have feelings of sadness, depression, darkness, anger, frustration, anxiety? Yes, that's what makes us the complex human beings that we are. This isn't either or, it's both and. Like much of life, to put things neatly into binaries limits our ability to see the glory of the world and the breadth of our own lives. Can you think of other binaries that we get caught in that limit our ability to see clearly? How about wrong and right? Can you think of a time when you were wrong and it opened up a whole new awareness for you to find that out? Can you think of a time when you made a wrong turn and you ended up in this beautiful space that you never would have seen on the main path? How about black and white? Connects to bad and good. We know from bias tests that white people take that to see an image with dark skin quickly compels negative reactions. What's the impact of this binary that controls our lives on our dark-skinned neighbors? How about outer and inner? Another thing that was mentioned in our text for today, suggesting that the truth from within controls what comes out. Our behavior results from what's inside. We know that what we think and believe does affect how we behave. This is what it means to be authentic, to have the two match. And we know that how we behave affects what we believe. We can act our way into new ways of thinking. This is exactly how we change habits. These past few months, no matter what side of the aisle literally or figuratively, you sit on, have been months of upheaval and anxiety. From one day to the next, we're not sure what's going to come at us. Have you developed behaviors that have helped you stay calm in this anxiety? Do you only watch the news in the morning, or only look at the news in the evening? Or maybe not look at the news at all? What are the behaviors that you've developed to stay integrated, to remain connected to what is true and holy and loving? Behavior does affect how we feel. Some other binaries: them and us, down and up, hell and heaven. There are many more. I'm sure you could name some that I'm not going to talk about today. One of my practices since COVID began, is to try to complicate the narrative. The poets help me. It's why I've become friendly with so many poets. Work, not the poets themselves, I wish. I want to know more before I make a decision. I like to stand at 10,000 feet, so to speak, before I weigh in. I want to hear people's stories and then ask what else, or the why behind the thing, or how it came to be that way. I want the nuanced version with the details, because sometimes we can only see what we know. And to know more is to see better. My sister and I played this game in our conversations about the family. We're very different people, the exact opposite of me in many ways. Sometimes when we reflect on a family time, she'll say, "Did you hear when so-and-so said that?" And I'll say, "Yeah, and did you hear how so-and-so replied?" Or, "Did you notice that thing that one of the family members did?" And I'll say, "Yeah, but did you notice that thing that one of the family members did?" And somehow when we share these stories, our impression of, our view of the family gets bigger, and we become softer and more understanding and more gracious. What if we, as a church, were even more varied? I mean, we think we're pretty much alike, but you start talking about how you eat, how you decide how to spend your money, where you vacation, all the things. We're very different people. And imagine if we were more varied in other ways. What could we learn about our world, about ourselves? Maybe we'd become more soft, more understanding, and more gracious. As individuals, the same is true. We cannot be put in a one-size-fits-all box. Ralph Waldo Emerson wrote, "Do not mold me. The world is too wide." Walt Whitman wrote, "I am multitudes." Frida Kahlo painted many portraits of herself, each one very different. Who are you? And what if someone put you in a characteristic cage? So we're programmed to think in binaries. It's in our DNA, and we know that we are connected throughout the world to what is very different, the other than human world, the spiritual realm, for instance. So even in our lives of binaries, it's both and. It's true that we need our safe spaces, and we need to be challenged to learn and grow. It's true that we're part of small, intimate groups, and that we're part of all of humankind. It's true that we are some part introvert and need our downtime, and we're some part extrovert and can relate to others with joy. It's true that there's anti-Semitism in the world. And it's true that the state of Israel, supported by the U.S., is committing genocide in Palestine. It's true that a black man could become the president of the United States and that racism still exists in our country. It's true that public discourse in our country is important, and it's true that it's important to take a stand. It's true that life is filled with joy and that life is really difficult sometimes. I hope I've invited you today to think beyond binaries. I hope you're encouraged to wonder what else, to be curious in your lives. To live authentically means to be roomy, to make space for what is not known. At the very least, we ought to hold each other accountable to complicate the narrative. So when someone makes a statement, ask, I wonder why you say that. Or tell me more. Or help me think about that. We ought to listen to each other's stories and practice finding common ground and challenge each other to move beyond what is comfortable. This is what it means to be our authentic selves as people who say we follow the way of Jesus. Pretty soon, we're going to sing, as our closing song, the song, This Little Light of Mine, and it reinforces that shininess that we all need to have. And I'm not suggesting that we shouldn't, right? Our witness ought to be big and beautiful. And we're human beings who are more than just bright and shiny. Sometimes we cry. And so I asked Jeff and Peter if pretty soon when we sing that song, for the first verse, we could sing, This little tear of mine, I'm gonna let it fall. I know, it doesn't rhyme. This little tear of mine, I'm gonna let it fall. Be your whole selves and think for a moment about what binaries you get stuck in and how you can be a bigger, more authentic person.